Hello, it is Saturday, July 6th, 2024, and this is Political Dharma with Alan Zundel. Last week, I talked about how the presidential debate, which happened a little over a week ago, might affect the opportunities for alternative presidential candidates, such as independent candidates Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West, as well as the candidates of the leading minor parties, such as Jill Stein of the Green Party and Chase Oliver of the Libertarian Party. I speculated that, in particular, Joe Biden's poor performance in the debate might cause people to start looking elsewhere for their choices outside the two major party candidates, and maybe it would create the opportunity for these alternative candidates to move forward and make a bigger impact on the election. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if that debate had any effect on the alternative party candidates by a couple of different metrics. And then I'm just going to move into the general situation of these alternative candidates and how they're doing, in particular, in getting ballot access in the various states. So welcome once again to Political Dharma, and we'll start out. First of all, I'm not going to talk a lot about the major party candidates, but I will say that the Democratic Party continues to be roiled internally over whether or not they want to keep Joe Biden on as their nominee. We saw more and more media commentators who have usually backed Biden and the Democrats talking about the party replacing Biden and finding a candidate who can perform better and worrying about whether Biden can actually do the job of president, not just do a good job as a debater or campaigner. We saw stories about politicians talking behind the scenes about the same thing, and donors, big donors in the party. Now, these are the ones that have real clout. Some of the donors have been saying as well, according to these news reports, that they think they should move on from Biden to somebody else. But still, in the main, it is the Biden people and Biden himself who refuse to resign, who won't go along with that. They're trying to explain why he did such a bad job and convince people that he can still be a good president, even though he was not doing a very good job as a debater, let alone making any sense. He didn't say that, I did. So what I found especially revealing in some of these articles was this one from Politico, where it talked about the delegates to the Democratic National Convention who said they are also open to replacing Biden as their official nominee. Now remember, a lot of these people were actually chosen by the Biden campaign in the various states to represent them as delegates to the convention. So Politico interviewed a number of these people, both I assume both those who were not pledged to Biden, but the majority of them were pledged to Biden. So they found that some of these people are saying same thing that they've been hearing elsewhere, which is, okay, if Biden decides to step down, we're fine with looking for somebody else, but we're not going to try to push him out, not yet anyway. So a loss of support there means that it's a little more likely that maybe someone can persuade Biden that he's got to step down and they need to do something else, and they're preparing to do that if it comes to that possibility. So given that the Democratic Party is having this problem, and as I will be talking about later, it's not only the Democrats who are in contention over their nominee, it's also the Libertarian Party people. What kind of change has this made in voters' willingness to consider or back alternative presidential candidates? We're going to look at this from a couple of metrics. First of all, what does the polling show? Now, I have a poll from a combination poll, actually. This is from 538, the organization. You can find it at 538.com, where they take a lot of what they regard as high-quality polls from across the country, and they combine them into an average. So what you see here is the statistics for voter support for Trump, Biden, and Kennedy as of today. And I want to compare those to what it was just before the debate on June 26th. The debate was on June 27th. So on June 26th, Trump had 41% support from the voters, and Biden had 40.9% of the vote, a virtual dead heat. After the debate today, Trump had 42.2%, which looks like about 1 percentage point increase, and Biden had about a 39.6% voter support. Who would you vote for tomorrow if the election were actually held? Which means he went down about 1 percentage point. Now, keep in mind that the margin of error for these various polls is usually around 3%, so this might not mean much of anything, given that these changes of 1.5 to 1% are well within the margin of error and might not mean anything but a statistical artifact. But let's look at Kennedy as well, down there on the bottom. Back in June, his support was at 9.3%, and now on July 6th, it's 9.8%, which possibly shows a little bit of a change, a little bit of a support by just a half percentage point, but we have to be skeptical about that as well because it's so small and well within the margin of error. So I looked at another poll to see what they might be finding more specifically, and this is a poll done by the Suffolk University in combination with USA Today, and you can see there a side-by-side comparison with a poll done in May and a poll done at the end of June after the debate was held. In May, again, we find Trump and Biden pretty much tied at 37%, but then come now, after the debate, Trump is up to 41%. That's like 4 percentage points higher. And Biden is at 38%. That's 1 percentage point higher, which means that Biden really essentially hasn't changed according to this poll, according to this poll. And Trump seems to have definitely gained some steam from this. Now, where are those votes coming from? This poll happened to do a number of alternative candidates, not only Kennedy, but Chase Oliver of the Libertarian Party, Cornel West, another independent, and Jill Stein of the Green Party. And we find that in May, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was at 8%, but then after the debate, he's at 8.2%. Really no change at all when you include the margin of error. Chase Oliver went from 2% to 1.4%, about a half percentage point drop, which again probably doesn't mean anything. Cornel West went from 2% to 1.3%, about a 0.7% drop. And Jill Stein stayed at 1%. So we don't see much of a change at all when you include the margin of error. Where we do see the change is at the bottom there in undecided. It dropped from 12% in May to 7.9% here in June after the debate. So what we see from this is an indication in at least one poll that Donald Trump has gained voter approval from those who were previously undecided. In other words, the presidential debate moved people from being undecided between the two major party candidates to being more in favor of Trump than Biden. Meanwhile, the alternative party candidates don't seem to have changed at all. Now, this, of course, is not the only way that you could measure support. How about fundraising, for example? Has there been any change there? And as a matter of fact, at least two campaigns are reporting that there was significant improvements in their fundraising. First, let's hear from an interview Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did with Cigar and Jetty on the Breaking Points podcast and video on YouTube.
I'm curious on your fundraising numbers. Have you seen a major increase? I believe your campaign just said you've raised $46 million. Currently, about $10 million of that from your vice president. Can you give us any insight into post-debate, considering the amount of political interest that's spiked in this country since?
I honestly don't know the numbers. I do know this, that on the day of the debate that we had a record day fundraising. And I've heard, but I can't guarantee you this. I've heard that the fundraising has been very, very good since the debate.
It was not only Kennedy that reported an increase in the funding donations that they were getting after the debate, but Jill Stein, in an interview with Newsweek, and you see here a tweet from Newsweek on X, heralding its interview with her, that Jill Stein also saw a surge of financial support after Biden's debate performance, which means she's not only getting more money for her campaign, she's also getting a higher profile by giving coverage by Newsweek. And I also saw an article in which Jill Stein recently met the qualifications for Federal Elections Commission financing, public support for her campaign, matching funds, because she met the criteria, whatever it was, of raising a certain amount in small donations from a certain number of states. So she's in pretty good shape financially, at least for a minor party candidate like that. Let's turn away, though, from the metrics after the debate and look more generally at how those candidates are doing in terms of getting on the ballot across the various states. They'd have to get on ballots where so people can actually vote for them, so they can make any kind of an impact at all in this upcoming presidential election. First of all, let's look at them all as a group and see where they're at. Here is a chart that I've been making as I try to keep track of this. Republican and Democratic parties, of course, are on the ballot in all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia. Meanwhile, the Libertarian Party seems to be on the ballot in about 37 states, but a caveat here is that not all of those state parties in the Libertarian Party are going to be putting their official nominee, Chase Oliver, on their ballot as their presidential nominees. In fact, a couple of them have said they're definitely not. And in one case, at least, which I'm going to be talking about later, they are instead replacing him with the Kennedy-Shanahan ticket on the ballot. Moving down to the Green Party, they've got about 27 states now that they've at least met the requirements for getting signatures or whatever they need to do to get on the ballot. Now, with all these, except for the Democrats and Republicans, that doesn't include whether the resolution of any legal challenges to be on the ballot or the verification of petition signatures by the Secretary of State or the elections officials in the various states. But as far as them doing what they needed to do, get on the ballot, there's about 27 states. RFK Jr., he's now just one behind the Green Party. He's at 26 states, more than half of them. And we saw in this last week that there was a few states that he was able to get on the ballot on. Of course, he's not just doing this by petition and gathering signatures. He's also getting the nomination of a few minor parties here and there. And one of them is the Libertarian Party in Colorado. Again, I'll be talking about that later. And then the other is getting his We the People Party on the ballot in a few of those states as well. So a mixture of how to do this. Let's look first here at deadlines for independent candidates because it's different than for minor parties. Here you see arranged in chronological order the deadlines for the various states in the country as far as a independent candidate getting the signatures or meeting the qualifications for getting their name on the ballot. If we look at the column under Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here, in the left column towards the top, all those gray states, shaded gray, are states in which the deadline has already passed. That would be North Carolina, Texas, New York, New Hampshire, Utah, Illinois, New Mexico, and just this week, Indiana and Nevada, which I'll be talking about a little more in a minute. And he's met the requirements in virtually all those states. Again, that doesn't mean they've necessarily done with legal challenges to that, and it doesn't necessarily mean the state has certified all the signatures or whatever it was they did to qualify. But according to the campaign, they did what they had to do, and now they just have to beat off challenges and make sure the process is fair after that. On the other hand, Cornel West has only been able to get on the ballot in North Carolina and Utah, so not doing very well at all, although this week, as I'll mention, he met the deadline for Georgia, which is coming up this week. If you look even further down, except for Georgia, the Kennedy campaign has gotten on the ballot of all the states whose deadlines are in the rest of July. You can also see they're shaded in like a light purple or lavender that most of the states have deadlines in August, and already Kennedy is on, I don't know, roughly almost half of those, either with a minor party or his own party or by gathering signatures. Meanwhile, Cornel West is only on 3 of those in August, and all 3 through the nomination of a very small minor party. So Cornel West, in my opinion, when he moved from seeking the nomination of the Green Party to becoming an independent candidate without the kind of financial resources he did or the national profile that he really needed, he has just sunk in terms of his ability to have an impact on this campaign. And I don't expect he'll be able to do very well. I hope he does. More the merrier, in my view. More choices we have, the better, for various reasons. So Kennedy's doing very well in this process. Over half the states, or about half the states, about over half, 26 states, he's on the ballot for already, and he's met the deadline for every state that's passed so far. Now, just this week, Kennedy got, according to his campaign, tripled the number of signatures they needed to get ballot access in New Mexico, and the deadline for New Mexico was, I think, last week, not this recently ended week, but the week before that. And in Indiana, interestingly enough, here's a piece from the Indiana Citizen. The headline is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. campaign confident he will be on Indiana's November ballot. The Kennedy campaign hasn't announced that they've succeeded in Indiana yet, and I think that's because Monday was the deadline. Monday noon was the deadline, and they were feverishly turning in signatures. You had to turn in signatures to various county offices, and this Indiana citizen by Marilyn Odendahl, she contacted the county officials to find out how they were doing. And it looks like they were turning in lots and lots of pages of petitions. And in some cases, at least one county, they turned them in after the noon deadline, which means those petitions won't count. So the Kennedy campaign is going to have to figure out how well they did actually getting in the petitions in time and how many signatures that represented. But it could well be that they got enough done to get on the ballot in Indiana. Now, if they fail in doing that, just like they fail in any other state, like fail to meet a legal challenge where they thought they were able to get on the ballot, there's other avenues for getting on, one which would be becoming the nominee of a minor party. I'll be talking about that in a little bit as well. Now, in Nevada, as you know from my past episodes, the Kennedy campaign turned in lots of signatures a while back, but then the elections official, the Secretary of State, said, no, it didn't have your vice president's name on it, so it doesn't count. In addition to bringing a legal challenge to that decision, the Kennedy campaign decided, well, to be safe, they're going to go ahead and collect signatures all over again. So this week on Wednesday, I believe, they turned in again their second batch of signatures for, not again their second, but either again, they turned in a batch of signatures, or this is their second batch. You get the point. But they turned in signatures to get on the ballot in Nevada, and all quite an achievement in a very short time frame, doing it all over again just to make sure they got on the ballot. That really speaks well to the Kennedy campaign's organization and their ability to get things done. And then finally this week, Kennedy campaign got on the ballot in Colorado through the Libertarian Party of Colorado. What you see on your screen, if you're watching this in video form, is a tweet on X from the Libertarian Party of Colorado saying that instead of putting their official nominee, Chase Oliver, on the ballot as their presidential candidate, they decided to partner with the Kennedy campaign to put Kennedy Shanahan on their ballot instead. And they go on to talk about their decision to do this and why they're doing it. But I have coming up a short clip from an interview with the chair of that party explaining it a little more fully. So I will go to that in a bit. And that's Kennedy. He's gotten on 3 states just this week alone. And that shows how well he's doing. He's like just knocking them down one by one. Meanwhile, Cornel West did turn in plenty of signatures. He says 4 times the amount of signatures to get on the Georgia ballot. He seems to be doing pretty well in the southern states. Outside of that, not quite as well, although, getting the minor party nomination in various states has helped him. But he got 1 this week, not too many in previous weeks. He's not doing really well, as I've said before. All right, let's transition over to my face again, if you don't mind too much. So where are we at? So that's how they're doing on the ballot, the independent candidates. Now let's look at the minor parties, because the deadlines for them are different and the requirements for them to get on the ballot are different from independent candidates, which is one of the reasons why this process is so difficult for these alternative candidates, is because the rules are different in every state, and they're different for minor parties than they are for independent candidates, and et cetera. So, it's a very tricky process, very time consuming, takes a lot of volunteers or a lot of money, or ideally both, to be able to do that, to figure out the requirements in all the states and achieve that. So let's turn now to the minor parties and their deadlines. As you may see on your screen if you're watching this, already most of the deadlines have passed as of yesterday for the states that have deadlines. Now, you only see about half the states listed there, and that's because the other half of the states don't require you to gather signatures to get on the ballot. What they usually have is a criteria where if your party got a certain percentage of the vote in a previous election, usually a statewide election, like for governor, senator, or president, you're automatically on the ballot in the next 1 or 2 elections. So the Libertarians and Greens, of course, they got a certain percentage of the vote in enough states to get on the ballot in various states. But here it shows deadlines for petitioning, and already a lot of those deadlines have passed. Libertarian Party has gotten on the ballot in almost all those up to now, with the exceptions of Minnesota and Alabama. The Green Party nearly as well. They don't have Alabama or Oklahoma or Minnesota or Wyoming or Ohio, but they got, how many more? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 so far out of those states. So they're doing pretty well. And through August 30th, there's only like a handful of states yet to go. And already the Libertarian Party's on most of them. And the Greens are about on half of them, a little more than half of them, I think, just estimated from the picture here. But on other states, they've been able to get on the ballot more successfully. I have a graphic here that shows that. This was released by Jill Stein's campaign, and it shows how many states they've gotten on the ballot on. The deep green shows where they've already on the ballot, either through the percentage of the vote they got in a previous election or through successful petitioning. The light green states are where they're currently petitioning to get on the ballot. The blue states, kind of an aqua, they've finished their petitioning, but either not yet turned them in or not yet had them certified or verified. So almost all the states across the country, the Green Party is close to succeeding to getting on the ballot. This may be the first election where they actually perform better than the Libertarian Party because, the Chase Oliver is not going to be on all the ballots the Libertarian Party has, and they're not going to be on the ballot in all the states, whereas the Green Party may not be on the ballot in all the states, but it'll be close. In all of them, I would predict are going to have Green Party candidate Jill Stein, very few exceptions. The orange state up there is New York, where the Stein campaign tried to turn in enough signatures, but they failed to do so. And then they brought a legal challenge to the state of New York saying their requirements were too stringent. The yellow one is Oklahoma, down there above Texas. And instead of having a petitioning requirement, what they have is a $35,000 fee you got to pay to get on the ballot. And the Stein campaign is currently actively trying to gather money to get on the ballot in Oklahoma by paying that fee, by having enough money to pay that fee. Maybe with their matching funds from the FEC, from public funding, they'll be able to do that. Aside from that, I want to turn to something I talked about previously, which was that states, parties, and various people in states, I don't want to say parties because you confuse that with political parties, but various entities, whether corporate or legal or individual, are trying to get these candidates off the ballot as well, both the independent candidates and the minor party candidates. But this week, 2 U.S. House Committee chairmen asked North Carolina State Board of Elections to produce documents saying why they're delaying the certification of some of the parties that were already certified, or at least in the counties that collected these petitions. The county said they had enough verified signatures, but now it went to the State Board of Elections and they said, well, hang on, we think something's wrong here. These parties or these campaigns were cheating somehow. It wasn't valid. So 2 Republican federal officials in the House of Representatives are asking North Carolina to explain what's going on here. They're doing that for the Constitution Party, Kennedy's We the People Party, and West's Justice for All parties. Now, in my experience, the Democratic Party has been much more, vigorous in trying to knock competing candidates off the ballot, third-party candidates and alternative candidates. The Republicans do it as well, usually the Libertarian Party, where they think it might affect their ability to win an election. But they're not nearly as relentless as the Democratic Party, quotes around Democratic Party, seems to be. So we talked about the alternative parties as well as the alternative candidates and where they stand with ballot access and what else is going on. I want to talk now about the Libertarian Party in particular. As I've said in previous episodes, they nominated their candidates for president and vice president, but then a lot of the state parties and a lot of the members of the party were unhappy with that. So I saw that this week again. Some of this was surfacing. Idaho, their state committee was complaining to the national committee about how the nomination happened and saying that this needs to be rectified. And of course, in Colorado, as I mentioned, the state party said they're going to put Kennedy on the ballot, and I found that particularly interesting. So I'm going to play a clip from an interview. Well, wait a minute. Let me go to something else first. One other thing about the challenges within the Libertarian Party, and here is a legal group, the Rock Springs Law Group, sent a letter to Libertarian Party National Chairperson Angela McArdle saying that the elections of presidential and vice presidential candidates, as well as the vice chair of the National Committee, were invalid because of illegal delegates, i.e., e.g., most of the Michigan delegates being allowed to vote. That's one of the arguments people who are opposed to Oliver's nomination have brought up, that the process in the National Convention was not valid. Other arguments they brought up is they simply don't think Oliver is a good candidate who represents the whole party. So that's what they said in Idaho. But let's listen to what the chairperson, her name is Hannah Goodman, had to say in an interview with Free State Colorado about their reasons in that state for putting Kennedy on the ballot instead of their own nominee, Chase Oliver.
So why isn't the LPCO going to nominate the Oliver and Termott ticket?
Well, it really doesn't reflect the values of Colorado libertarians. It was a very contentious national convention. It took 7 rounds to get Mr. Oliver and Termott through. That right there shows you that overall, Chase didn't win in a landslide victory. He really doesn't necessarily even represent libertarians across the nation. And I was told by his campaign that he's broadly libertarian, whatever that means. So in Colorado, we had some serious issues with his takes on COVID. We feel that he was very much in alignment with the regime during COVID and all of that tyranny. There's some issues that we fundamentally disagree on. We believe it is a NAP violation. The NAP is the non-aggression principle. You will not use violence to achieve political ends, basically. So we view puberty blockers and chemical castrations for children as NAP violations because it physically alters their body and they don't necessarily have the ability to consent.
So why is the LPCO putting RFK Jr. on the ballot in Colorado?
They asked me to pursue different avenues for who would be a good fit for the ticket of Colorado. And would we just put no one on there? That was also a very real option. We were presented with RFK, who came to the national convention. So he's a sustaining member of the party. He is a registered libertarian. With that, the people that were working to get him the nomination at national reached out to board members and they asked me to pursue looking at that. I was able to meet with the Kennedy campaign and I was able to discuss potential what that would look like. I think this is a huge opportunity for an education campaign to bring the ideas of libertarianism to everyone, not just him. Because if we can get him to espouse them, and we will be able to get him to espouse them, we're going to be really pushing that needle for liberty forward.
That was from the Free State Colorado YouTube channel, and I pared down a half-an-hour interview to just about 2.5 minutes, but I tried to give you a flavor of the arguments she was using for not supporting their official nominee, Chase Oliver, and instead giving their ballot over to the Kennedy-Shanahan ticket. Now, this is particularly interesting because given the turmoil within the party over the Chase nomination and so many people calling for the National Committee to use their power to overturn the nomination of Oliver and to instead, decide on somebody else to be the candidate, the National Committee is dominated by the Mises Caucus, and the Mises Caucus at the convention championed a different presidential candidate than Oliver. They championed Michael Rechtenwald, and they didn't get him after 7 ballots, as she said. So this process of trying to get the National Committee to free up states or to take Oliver down as the official nominee could have an unusual outcome in that if the National Committee did do that and put somebody else in place that of their liking, then people could see this as an underhanded movement that you didn't win at the convention, so now you're trying to win elsewhere in a different way. And I would say that their best bet here is to simply say we free all the states to put on the ballot whoever they want, even though that's not going to help the party very much because they won't be unified. Let every state decide for itself. Some of the states might decide to follow the example of Colorado and actually put Kennedy on the ballot for the reasons that the chair of Colorado, Hannah Goodman, was outlining for us, that they think Kennedy will get more attention to the party and create greater openness for the party to espouse its principles and also help candidates down ticket for other offices to get a little more exposure, may be persuaded. They may be persuading other state parties to do the same thing. So if Kennedy, for some reason, isn't able to meet a legal challenge or fails to get on the ballot in some states, maybe the Libertarian Party in those states instead will decide to put Kennedy on the ballot, following the example of Colorado. I don't know how likely that is, but again, it creates the possibility for an interesting race, as so many things this year and in recent years have shaken up the political calculus for what's actually going to happen. All right, I think that's about it for the Libertarian Party. One other thing I wanted to flag to your attention is that the Free and Equal Foundation is going to have a presidential debate. I think it's on this coming Friday. It's the July 12th. Today's the 6th, so it'd be like Friday evening from 5 to 7 Pacific time. It's going to be on C-SPAN and Rumble and other platforms, as well as live streaming at their own freeandequal.org website. I don't know which presidential candidates are actually going to show up. I think they invited the major party candidates and most of the minor party candidates as well. And they did have criteria for appearing on this. As you can see at the bottom of this, it says Friday, July 12th, from 8 to 10 Eastern Time and 5 to 7 Pacific Time. It's going to be in Las Vegas. To qualify for the debate, first of all, you have to meet the constitutional requirements to be president. That covers all of them. Number 2, have secured ballot access in a sufficient number of states to have a majority in the Electoral College, hypothetically, and that's the same as the Commission on Presidential Debates has done in the past, and the Biden-Trump campaigns did for this debate as well, even though they were funny in the way they were determining who was actually on the ballot in the various states, because Biden and Trump aren't on the ballot yet, not having been nominated, and it's still an open question whether Biden is going to be the candidate on the ballot. Or, this is important, or, instead of and, they're saying or receive more than 2% in a national poll meeting their standards. So they're making this easier by saying not only did they reduce the percentage of the vote you have to get in polls from about 5% to 2%, making it easier for other candidates to qualify, they're also saying you can do either or. Either you got it on the ballot in lots of states, or you're showing about 2 percentage point in or better in one poll. I wish they would create more lenient requirements in the national debates that are televised between the major party candidates, because that would show us all that we do have more choices than they like us to believe. And to me, that's a good thing, even though, you can't make a spoiler argument when there's so many candidates polling people in different directions. It's simply a competition to get the most votes, right? And it also shows how much lack of support the major party candidates probably have, at least if people are able to overcome that prejudice against the so-called spoiler elections, and also able to be exposed to who these other candidates are. Maybe they like them, maybe not. Never know until it actually is they attempt to do that. So that's it for this week, covering the alternative candidates for the presidency. And I do thank you all for your subscriptions and your likes on these videos, as well as your comments. Last week I asked for comments on possibly monetizing this channel because I qualified for it now. And several of you said fine to put commercials before and after, but not in the middle. So that's what I've done. As you probably noticed, there was a commercial at the beginning of this, so I tried to shorten the opening segment so that you wouldn't have to wait through that as well as a commercial. I did also create a Patreon page. That's at patreon.com/politicaldharma, where you can become a regular supporting member for a small amount of money each month. You just sign up, and then I've got some stuff up on Patreon already. It's mostly links. It's entirely links to my YouTube channel. I've organized them slightly differently. Some of what I think are the more important presidential election videos, the most recent ones, as well as the ones where I explain contingent election and other things, so it's easier to find things. I'll be doing more with that Patreon account. I don't have any exclusive benefits yet, but I'm thinking at least I can put on the videos so you can watch. If you're a supporting member of some kind, you can watch them without the commercials on them. So that's exclusive privilege, and I'll be looking into what else I can do. Been hard to make time for this because some of you know my wife and I have been looking for. We sold our house. We're looking for a place in California. This week we did make an offer on a place, and they made a counteroffer, and we accepted. So in a few weeks, maybe we'll be able to move to California, get settled in our new place, and then I'll be able to devote more time to this podcast, trying to improve the quality and maybe do more shorter ones instead of one longer one on the weekend. So I look forward to doing that. Again, you can support me by Patreon, by watching the commercials. And also, if you just want to make a one-time donation, you can go to politicaldharma.com, my website, where so far I don't have a lot up. Again, something I'd like to get to when I have more time, and make a one-time donation through the link there to a secure PayPal account. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate all of you, and I look forward to doing another one of these next week. So long for now. Bye.
With ease, I see the chains are breaking. We gained our focus, the moves we're making will prove to determine our self-worth as a passenger on this vehicle Earth.